offensive items such as Nazi flags and guns ahead.
Shirley Hartley Meissner, and I'm a docent here at the World War II Museum in Rowlesburg, West Virginia. This is my partner, Katie Orris Gannon. That's me.
I'm taking her last name. It's her last name. Have fun spelling it, everybody.
We're going to switch. I'm going to be the free.
Yes.
Anyway, our museum is the gentleman, Jeffers Weibel, who created the museum. He and his wife makes the faces by hand. He starts off with the styrofoam head, and then he molds each face to fit the different nationalities. You'll see there's different nationalities throughout the museum, and it's a very interesting concept. But this is, I always thought that one looked like General Patton, or Eisenhower, I mean.
Eisenhower,
yeah.
A little tall for Eisenhower.
And then this is what they would have had on at Omaha Beach on D-Day. We have the news article about the beach, and I think that's the battle plan over there. And then these are gliders. These are the guys that dropped from the gliders.
These gliders, this is a pilot, and this is a parachutist, and they have to maneuver this glider, which has no power, from the sky and land it down on the ground. Now that is not easy, and it's sometimes disastrous. But they do a good job. They bring in medical supplies, drop them behind the lines, ammunition, whatever kind of materials they need to make mischief for the Nazis. And but it's really very hazardous duty. High mortality rate, but their missions are successful.
Well, the Germans eventually started putting spikes in the ground where these people were going to land. When they had valuable things, they would put spikes in the ground, and that's what caused a lot of deaths too. Katie likes to tell about Kilroy.
Yeah. Oh, Kilroy.
Yeah.
Yes. You probably don't even know Kilroy.
Nope.
No.
Can't say I do.
Okay, well, he was an inspector in the shipyards, and it was his job to go around and count the number of rivets that were put in daily, because the men were paid per rivet.
Oh my.
So he would come along and make a check mark, and then the workers would walk along and erase the check mark. So then the next day he'd recount them all. So they were getting double pay for their rivets.
Hey, make them hustle.
And he got smart and realized what they were doing. So every time he inspected, he put his signature on there.
Mm-hmm.
So this was even found. Kilroy was at the
It was in every country that the American soldiers were.
he was even at the Yalta conference right after the World War II win, and in the restroom, which was an outdoor restroom, on the inside of the restroom was Kilroy.
Oh my goodness.
Because was it Khrushchev? Stalin went to the restroom and he came back out and he said, "Who was Kilroy?"
Hey, Katie, I just thought of something.
What?
That was women that were doing that, because the guys went to war and the women went to the factory, so
Well,
the
that's
women that
true.
were probably erasing that.
That's true. That inspector was probably a woman,
And so were the workers.
and so were the workers.
Oh my goodness.
I like to tell about this. When you met Eric,
Yeah.
the tall guy there, well, this is his father's uniform. And he came here from the Philippines and met and married his wife, and they had their family here in Mannheim. But he was the executive chef for Roosevelt and Truman in the White House and on the USS Potomac. So every place they went, he went. And when he retired, President Truman gave them the flag that was flying on the ship.
Oh.
So that's why we keep this one behind glass, because it's,
And Eric was the one you met in.
yeah, and he's our local mayor now.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, everybody was always fascinated that when I got to the apartment, we met Eric. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, he's the mayor, and he invited us back. And they're just like, you met the town mayor, and he invited you back. I was like, yeah. And they make comments about Hagerstown, Maryland's
Well,
politics.
these guys are all different nationality. This one is British, this one's Canadian, this one is British, this is a British paratrooper, and this one is Katie's boyfriend.
Katie's boyfriend.
Now, I'll tell you what, if you spend enough time in here, these people become your friends.
Mhm.
And sometimes you fall in love. And
You just like his chiseled chin.
I think it's the dark hair.
He's a
I
Belgian
don't know.
volunteer. He would
the
work
lips,
as a,
the lips are very nice too there. You see?
you know, I think they're going to have to delete some of this, Katie.
Absolutely not.
This is
Keeping it.
no
No,
bad.
you know, in Belgium, the country, the people there were split. Some of them went with the Nazis and some went with the Allies. So some of the young men escaped from Belgium, went to England, joined the British Army, then came back to Belgium to fight the Nazis and to help free their country. And isn't he just so cute?
He is. I mean, I see it. I really do.
This is the Battle of the Bulge, and that's when so many people froze to death and lost limbs and so forth. Belgian people that loved the Americans would bring their bed sheets out and cover the helmets, so when they're down in the foxholes and the planes flew over, they would not be able to see there were troops there.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is a German paratrooper. And this next exhibit is one of our very favorites because it's so local. Charles Brown was a student in President schools, and he went to Potomac State, graduated there, and then joined the Navy because he wanted to learn to fly. But he was shot down over the Sea of Japan on his first mission. He hit his target, dumped the load, and then they were shot down. And he was taken to a Japanese prison camp and spent 6 months in 3 different camps. And the stories he tells about that are horrendous. Katie, take over.
And the interesting thing about Charlie Brown is that after he came back, went back to school, became an attorney, practiced in Kingwood for forever, and several times he went back to Japan, where at one point he met some of the captors who had kept him in the prison, prisoner of war camp, and takes a big man, but he forgave them all for that war
That is a good
and
person.
for the way he was treated. You have to understand that the Japanese soldiers and so forth, as well as the Germans, they were doing what they were told to do and how to do it. And they were brutal, both of them.
Yeah.
So it takes a big man to be able to forgive that.
It really does.
But when we were here last time, I said he looks a whole lot like Tom Cruise.
He
Tom
does.
Cruise, really?
Yeah.
When very Top Gun-esque. Whenever, I guess it's Goose's funeral.
Yeah.
Yeah, that looks a lot. I don't think he was the inspiration, but it gives off Tom Cruise vibes.
Well, now you see this photograph over here. Can you zero in on that one? And then you look at these images, look at the faces,
Mm-hmm.
especially these two.
Hey, Charlie
And
Brown.
you can see how Jeff Versweibel was the creator here, and how he sculpted those faces to resemble Charlie Brown.
Fantastic job.
Does that still look like Tom Cruise?
It's not as much,
Not as much.
but still very handsome. Definitely. There's just something
See, he
about
was
him.
reported lost at sea and assumed perished.
Right.
His family was notified that he had not survived the crash until miraculously he came back from the war, from the prisoner of war camp, and was alive.
Because they had a funeral for him and everything, didn't
They were preparing one.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I couldn't remember if they had one or they were preparing one. Because I thought, no, it was,
Didn't they have a funeral prepared for Charlie Brown?
Yeah, he was one of the, well, they were throwing wreaths in the ocean for those that had died. And he got there after his wreath had gone in.
Section here is all we have of the war with Japan. And these are two Marines on reconnaissance. And you can see this newest of weapons down here.
Yes,
It
I was
has
told
the,
it's a night scope.
Yes.
See if I can get. Kind of hard to see, but we'll make it work.
And by the way, this is another one I love. This one down here.
I get it.
I come in here and open up this place in the morning and say, good morning to all my friends.
Yeah, when I go in and open up the back room, I just make sure that the nurses and the pilots are where they're supposed to be.
Right. Well, that's very important. Make sure they're not
Frolicking.
fraternizing.
Could I add a little,
You can add whatever you like.
Yes, okay, here in this sand down here, there are two little bullets. Now, back in the 1960s, 1965, my family, my husband, son who was 9, daughter who was 6, were in the Philippines. And we went to Corregidor. And my son found 2 of these little bullets on the island of Corregidor.
Really?
And he just passed a couple of years ago, and I found these little bullets among his things. And I thought, what better place for these bullets than in the World War II Museum? So here they are.
That's something we didn't get on the first one.
Right.
Well, you what?
I said that's something we didn't get on the first tour.
Oh, you didn't have me.
That's right, I always forget that one. That's a personal story. This is a German exhibit. And this is a German administrator. I thought he was an officer, but I've been told that he worked in administration in a green uniform.
Okay.
And that's his uniform and winter coat and helmet. And then these 3 are SS soldiers. The 2 on the outside are German. The one in the middle is Flemish, because they're again part of the Belgian people fought with Germany. This was at the beginning of the war when Hitler had lots of money and with better quality uniform, pleated pockets and so forth. This was at the end when they were running out of money. And Jeff told me that the lining of these uniforms came from the clothing that from the prisoners at Auschwitz.
Oh my.
And you may want to delete that. I don't know.
We'll find a way to make sure that everybody understands their sensitive.
And then these are the weapons are all had their firing pins removed, but they're all authentic. And this flag came when we were setting up the exhibit. Some guy came in and said he had a German flag if we wanted it, and Jeff said, well, sure, bring it in. He thought it'd be a little one like that Japanese flag. And the guy brought it in, and it's part of it's still rolled up underneath, but we think it was either a flag on a ship or a flag on a building when they were having.
Well, now,
Go ahead.
go ahead. If you saw any of the newsreels from World War II, you would see that Hitler comes out on this little balcony and addresses the people who were down below. And down on the wall below the balcony was one of these.
Yeah, this is what but somebody just said one day they thought, well, maybe it was off of a ship too because it's so huge, but I think it's a one from because it would have grommets on it, probably if it were a flag.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of my favorite rooms too. This is where they would, like a French barn, where they would take a wounded soldier to treat him. And Jeff, with his being authentic, gathered all of this old farm equipment from the 30s and the 40s, and it's all in there and arranged. And then I said, even to the bird's nest and the straw coming through the ceiling. But that's what it would be like in a French barn, where they were treating a wounded soldier. And then we always point out that saying, it's foolish and wrong to mourn the men who died. Rather, we should thank God that such men lived. And of course, that's General Patton. These are our paratroopers. We got some from the 82nd and the 101st. And this is Doug Britton's patch collection. This is Doug Britton's uniforms. He's local. And I've been told that the AA stood for All American, but that's all American soldiers. Now the other units had all nationalities in them.
And here again, Jeff shaped and did the face to resemble this picture. If you can see the resemblance.
I do.
Mm-hmm.
Just
But that red hair.
Mhm.
And this one,
Oh yeah.
not quite authentic looking, but
but still, the detail is very good.
And this is one for the different nationalities. This is a bunker, and a Russian officer, and this is the Eurasians had moved into Russia at the time and were fighting with them, so that explains the Oriental look on his face. And of course, the guy in the corner is definitely German, and he's serving as a night guard. Because Hitler said if you're too old, too young, or too sick to fight, you have to serve the fatherland in some way. And so he was a night guard, and the books say that the oldest one on record was 79, and the youngest one was 12.
Oh my goodness.
And the uniform he has on will make into a tent.
Okay.
Or a shelter of some kind. Didn't want to get that. This is our pilots and our nurses in here. And Molly Zeller, you'll hear more about her as we go along.
you're familiar with our Tuskegee Airmen.
Yes.
Which is in this one happened to be from the town of Fairmont, but I do
No, Piedmont.
No.
Oh, the
airmen.
I'm sorry, the other
Yeah.
guy, okay.
And there were several from the Morgantown area. I don't have any names, but and this was presented to Jeff, and it has the resemblances and some of the signatures of some of the Tuskegee Airmen. They were a very elite group of aviators during World War II. They ferried planes across the ocean from base to base. They accompanied some of the fighters.
No, they were fighters too.
Not until the very end of
Yeah,
the
right.
war. before that, they were just allowed to ferry the planes from place to place.
Jeff made this wall to look like an airplane with the colors of the plane, and you've got your sitting pretty on the end, and your bomb stripes, your German stripes, and your Japanese stripes. And back then, it was called the U.S. Army Air Force. And these are our pilots. This one is a Marine. This one fought in the China-Indonesia theater. This one was a volunteer, and he just flew equipment and did not fly people or did not fight. And speaking of boyfriends, this was mine.
All right, we got to see what they look like.
That's the one I was going to take home with me at one time. Sort of Clark Gable-ish, but he's wearing a dress uniform.
Very handsome.
And this is a wounded bombardier. And of course we got Jimmy Stewart, who was a film star and a soldier, and he came back as a hero too. Audie Murphy is the same category, but he is still the most decorated soldier ever.
Mm-hmm.
And he came back and played his own self in these movies. So.
Nice.
And then we got one World War I exhibit. That's donated by the Shaver family, who lived down here at Mannheim. And Mr. Shaver was an engineer, and the family donated all of his things to us.
He was in the cavalry, and that was during World War I, during which they were still riding horses in battle. So you see his spurs hanging down on the wall.
It's kind of funny you mention that because I've watched MASH with his parents the other week.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, and of course Colonel Potter, you know, he
Yeah.
was in World War I in the cavalry.
He was.
And of course he was talking about the horses, so yeah, I do love me some MASH.
I enjoy MASH, every one of the reruns.
Yeah.
I've got them memorized. This is interesting too. This is their communication system. I always tell the young kids when they came in, I said, "Yeah, you've got yours in your hip pocket."
Yep.
But this is what they used in the military back
This
then.
plus this little camera down
Yeah.
here.
Yep.
That's
Radar and
your
clanger.
cell phone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Please don't come get me 20th Century Fox.
And we got our nurses over here, and this is what I told Jeff about the nurses too. I said, you must have a fetish for women's lips because they're all so pretty.
They are.
So nicely shaped to their. But this one's Navy, and the others are Army. They're all Army nurses. And they say if you get a wounded soldier to a nurse within 30 minutes, they have an 80% chance of survival.
And those middle two little jackets, those are what they call the Eisenhower jackets, which are named for General Eisenhower. And as you can see, they're cropped.
Right, they're
And
higher
they're
up.
fitting, and they fit right around the waistline, which Eisenhower preferred. And so did everyone else after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The women, we were told that the women liked these two uniforms, but they didn't like those two. I guess these are more figure flattering.
They are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you have a waist.
Small waist.
Yes, it would be. Absolutely.
And you see the size of those waistlines?
Yeah, I see
When
that.
was the last time we had those? And I think I was 12.
I think I was just born. This is a Russian medical officer. Now, that's another good picture or example of his different nationalities. And she looks so stern and staunch. Of course, they were allowed to carry weapons, and they could kill. Our medical people were not allowed. And that's Molly Zeller. She was one of our first supporters. She came here from the very beginning, was a good friend of Jeff and Maggie's, lived at Alpine Lake, and she was in her mid-80s when she was still driving a little red convertible with the top down, and she played golf at Alpine all the time. So
Sounds like my role model.
Well, she was even shorter than you are. She probably was in you about here. Very vivacious woman, with a smile on her face all the time.
Yeah, she came here until she got sick, and her son took her to Arizona, where she passed
She's a
away.
very pretty lady.
I was about to say, she give me a run for my money and steal him.
Then we got this medical equipment from Gabe Heather's family. He was a medic in the 504th Bomb Group, and they donated all of that. Medical people will come through and they say, well, those are the same things we use. Of course, a lot of it's a different, I mean, this is glass and now it's plastic, but then you got the women's barracks over here.
And the woman MP.
And the woman in there, yeah. He likes to get those shots.
He does. Well, I want to make sure
You just be careful, because he's gonna fall in love before he leaves here.
I'll call his mama, she'll straighten him out. No, but that's one of the things that we really talked up was the detail in the faces. That's why we want to make sure we do. You guys are doing fantastic, by the way. Just beautiful.
Katie, tell them about this uniform.
Well, that little uniform jacket happened to belong to my sister-in-law. She married my brother after World War II, and her name was Willa.
Okay.
And she joined, was probably in 44, 45, towards the end of the war. And here again, you see that waistline?
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine someone with a waistline that small.
It is. But I bet she looked gorgeous.
She was very pretty, yes, she was.
And then here we have, this is the foodstuffs that they had. And we always like to point out this one, that there's a little sign, or little tag back there that says Lucky Strike Green has gone to war.
Mm-hmm.
They needed the green dye for the uniforms, so Lucky Strike went to the red and white package. And I assume that they still make Luckies, that's
Yes,
what color they are.
they do, and they're red and white. Because we've been looking for green.
Are they now? Well, they now have filters probably.
Yeah, they do.
Those did not have filters.
Speaking of things they needed for the war, here we have the home front. And this is Rosie the Riveter. Like I said, when the men went to war, the women went to work. And so we had several Rosies in the area here, which we've honored over the past few years. But they went into the factories and so forth. But this one Jeff did not make. We had a friend of the museum, an elderly gentleman who was a veteran, and he always wanted a Rosie in here. And Jeff had gone to Texas, so when Mr. Rotrud passed away, he said it left money in his will so we could get a Rosie. So this is a purchased mannequin, but she's dressed like Rosie.
Really, I didn't know that story.
Yeah.
Mr. Rotrud donated it.
Donated the money. And now down here you've got your ration books. And back then, every member of the family got a book with stamps in it. I think it was every 3 months. And if you wanted to buy gas or shoes or anything, tires, anything that the military needed, then you had to have a stamp for it. And if you ran out of gas stamps, then you parked your car. Now, can you see that happening now?
Well, we're getting that way.
Things-
Gas keeps going up.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to afford it. But anyway, the star in the window means that they have a son or daughter fighting overseas. If it's a gold star, then they've been killed in action. And this is in honor of Jeff and Maggie. That is a Belgian flag, Belgian uniform and helmet. And that's Maggie's mother and dad's picture there. And in Belgium, I think I told you this before, the women keep their father's name forever.
Yes.
So Katie could have been a wolf forever instead of
And
a
I
Norris
wouldn't
man.
have to give my name away.
Well, hey, I'm willing to take it, and you can be Lefevre.
Okay.
I'll notify my employer on Monday. And
You want to tell them about this one?
No, you know that story better than I
Okay,
do.
Jeff tried a different technique on this one. This is actually the image of Shauna Sines, who works with the youth in the VFW program here in Rowlesburg. And Jeff put this compound on her face and made some breathing holes, and it just took a minute or two for it to set up. And then he took it off and then put it on the mannequin, put it on the mannequin's head. But that is the image of Shauna Sines. Of course, she's only about this tall. So.
Right.
She grew a little bit, huh?
Because she's really the only one that he
But he did this one, yes.
Yeah.
Everything
She's-
else, and he did that by hand.
Mm-hmm.
And we have another wounded soldier there, but we had to have a wounded soldier for her to take care of.
And you know, all of the nurses had to be officers.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably because when you have a hospital full of young men, the nurses had to get their respect and their attention,
Yes.
and so they needed officers to do that.
Right.
And you can't fraternize with the enlisted men.
Right.
This is true. Very true. And then a nurse's station.
That's our little girl there that everybody gets to that corner down there and they think she's real.
She does.
When I first started coming to the museum a long time ago, that's what I thought. I thought, oh, my, they've got a receptionist there. She wouldn't talk to me.
Thanks for watching Bim and Dizzy's Adventures. Please like and subscribe.